Morning, everybody. Thank you very much for giving up your time today. My name's Phil Calvert. If we've not met before, I'm the founder of Life Talk, which was the world's first online community for financial advisors. I know some of you watching this today are members of Life Talk on Facebook. I think our Facebook group's been going for 18 years now, which is a long, long time. And it's interesting when we first started on Facebook, the Facebook tech was interesting, and like all things, tech moves forwards. And the bit of tech that we have behind the scenes to run a Facebook group is changing. And I know that Meta are going to be bringing in more AI into Facebook groups in terms of how posts are approved, how posts are not allowed. Interesting how things go. So thank you very much indeed. This is the second in our AI series where we're talking to the big players in the AI game as it comes to financial advisors. And today I'm really delighted that we've got Steve Mitchell and we've got Alan. Is it Gurung or Gurung? How do you pronounce it, Alan?
Gurung.
Fantastic. From Advisory AI. And I know Advisory AI is one of the firms, one of the AI businesses that comes up quite a lot in our Facebook group. So we've always got questions around that. Before we kind of dive in, I want to do a little bit of what we did on the first session, and just to kind of look at the kind of philosophical side of AI in terms of where it is, where it might go. And one of the things I've noticed, and I know Steve, you've got some thoughts on this. I'm seeing from everything I'm seeing financial advisors and all the different conferences that we go to, kind of five AI scenarios beginning to play out. And the word is scenario. It doesn't necessarily mean it will happen, but it's what a lot of people believe could happen. And there are five I'm seeing. Number one is we'll carry on as we are. And that for a lot of advisors is kind of interest in what AI can do, how it can help improve efficiency in the business and so on and so forth. There are other advisors that are really quite underwhelmed by what AI is doing, and with questions like, "Is that it?" Coming up, lot promised, not as much being delivered. So it kind of you pays your money and takes your choice in terms of how you see AI. So that's one scenario is that we'll carry on as we are now. Really, that just means that AI will end up being another tech tool that we use in the business. It'll make us more efficient, but we'll just end up with faster horses at the end of the day if it doesn't have a fundamental impact on the business model that we've got. Second scenario is there'll be no more financial advisors. Again, that's a scenario that some people are actively talking about. Personally, I don't think that's what's going to happen, but it is a scenario. But you talk to anybody who actually knows what they're talking about in the AI space, they don't really believe that's going to happen at all. Eric Schmidt, ex of Google, was saying only the other day he doesn't believe for a moment that accountants are going to disappear. He doesn't believe for a moment that lawyers are going to disappear. We're just going to have more complex stuff that the same people are going to be working on, but they will have great tools to help them do that. So no more advisors is another scenario. A third scenario is that we will have more advisors working on more interesting stuff and significantly more productive as we do it. And I think that's quite exciting as well. Although the average age of financial advisors in the sort of mid to high 50s at the moment, what I'm seeing in our Facebook group is a lot of young advisors starting to appear, which is really exciting. And many of those advisors, whilst they ask the same questions about how do I do this, how do I do that, behind the scenes, they've got some really interesting ideas about where they see financial advice and financial planning going. I think you talk about three phases, Steve. Perhaps we can talk about that a bit more because I think that's going to be relevant later. Scenario four is that many, many more humans will get access to financial advice and financial education, and it will be highly personalized as well. Where we talk about the advice gap, AI is going to really, really help out in that particular area. So I think, to me, I think the real prize of AI is this ability for financial advisors to do so much more to come up with completely new business models, really exciting business models at scale and at very low cost. And we can do that now. That's not like something we'll be doing in 5 years' time. No reason why we can't do that now. And scenario number five, I see the role of financial advisors actually changing because people are living longer, because we have the technology. We will, the role will, and to some extent it already is, the role will change to much more of a coaching kind of role where you might have one foot in financial planning and one foot in life coaching. I know a lot of advisors hate the sound of that, but I think that's where it's going to be. And because people are living longer, it is entirely feasible that you'll have a client potentially for 50 years or more. And so that's going to need some serious tech behind us to help out. And so that's kind of my crystal ball gazing. Any thoughts on that, guys? Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yes, so I think we firmly sit in the camp of certainly four, and probably a little bit of a change in the advisor's role in terms of five. So I started the industry in 2005. At that time, advisors were selecting and building their own portfolios, right? And so that rise of the sort of centralized investment propositions sort of changed to more of a planning type role. And so I think there's a further evolution, which is moving more away from the mechanics of either building the portfolio or the best optimal tax strategy, et cetera, based on objectives, more towards that coaching, because actually it's the empathy, the trust, you know, holding the client to make sure they're accountable, right? And also things like composure to say, okay, you know, the BBC News is reporting the market's gone down 10%. You know, close your eyes, I'll tell you when it's over. You know, there's some really important parts around that sort of human element. And I would liken it to, you know, I've got an app on my phone that says you should go to the gym, you should do this, that, and the other, but it's probably not the same as having a personal trainer in terms of accountability in the conversation and understanding education. So I think my view personally, I think probably Alan can come in here as well, but I think certainly looking at the democratization of access of financial advice. You know, I think there was a report saying maybe last year 8% of UK adults have financial advice, and post-consumer duty has dropped to 6%. Yeah, we're going the wrong way. And so actually having a world whereby advisors, rather than having 100 clients, could have 300 to 500, but with that, whilst sort of augmenting themselves with AI and having that same level of touch point or more time with their clients, that's really where I see the huge benefit of AI.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we're already starting seeing, I can't go onto YouTube without somebody telling me how to create an AI agent, which will send my bills out and book my restaurants and so on and so forth. Is that something you see happening?
Yes, so I think so. So we'll talk a little bit more around some of the agents that we've created,
Yeah.
and Alan, you know, as a founder and CEO of the business, who was a power planner, he was an advisor, he had his own wealth management practice. We've largely geared the agents that we created around the roles in a firm. So rather than talking about note taking, yes, great, transcription, push and pull to your back office, report production, we'll talk about all of that today. But actually, we simplify these things into three names in our business. So Alan's first ever power planner was called Emma. So our module for power planners that does suitability letters and review packs, LOA pack extraction, is called Emma. The advisor's assistant that does all the note taking, transcription, meeting note production is called Evie. And then we're just about to launch Colin, and Colin is in compliance. So really our aim is to create agents and assistants for each traditional role in the firm. Because I think one thing that I've seen from a lot of the sort of AI fatigue that exists with advisors is there's 15 or so providers out there that a lot of them do note taking, but I think it's trying to lift the efficiency of the entire firm and all of those roles. Ideally, we want to go with one provider rather than just having one become more efficient and the other ones becoming a bottleneck.
Right, fabulous. So, Alan, kind of over to you. What's your take on the big picture, and then let's hear your thoughts on what was the genesis of the business? How did it come about, and your kind of thoughts on that?
Sure. So to add on to a couple of your points that you mentioned earlier around people going, look, there's a lot of promise, but we're just not seeing it work to our benefit. We've heard that a lot as well. And even for some of the most innovative tech in the industry right now, if we utilize LLMs such as ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, or Gemini, and it's a strange one, right? Because if someone goes about in these LLMs and ask for the most rudimentary, most basic of tasks, it's going to get the most basic of outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
It is almost a skill in itself to go about understanding how to use this LLM to get to the outcome that you want. And hopefully companies like ourselves at Advisory AI, our intention is, well, you don't need to be that much of an expert in understanding how to utilize LLMs. We're going to try and help you out as much as possible from our side and get you as close as we can. And then there's like levels to this. For example, a really simple use case would be note taking, and there's quite great series of examples here on note taking because it's quite simple. Record, you get a transcript, and you get a meeting note afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But like in real life, when you end up utilizing, when you write a meeting note, that in itself is a simple act. But when it gets more complex is when you write things such as suitability letters or annual review letters. That in itself requires more work. Therefore, the LLM is working in a slightly different way, and you as the user will have to work slightly differently as well.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in our mind that this is a revolution in terms of how people go about working. If we think about all the previous industrial revolutions, what you'll find is the consistency between all of them is that they automated physical tasks. For the first time ever, we're somewhat in a strange situation because AI is automating one of the foundations of what we thought made us uniquely human, which is automating cognitive tasks.
Mm.
If we go back to the 1880s, about 60 million people in the West had a job title called ice harvesters. Have you ever heard of this job before, Phil?
Say that again. What was it?
Ice harvesters. So what these individuals would do is if you worked in a cold region, you would go to a lake that was frozen up and you'd saw up a block of ice and you'd preserve it through multiple different methods that's been passed down in generations, maybe your parents or your grandparents. And what you do off the back of that is you go and sell that block of ice to other households around the country. And that's what you do to store your food. As time went on, we found a way to go about transporting cold storage. And then, of course, in the 1914 or 16, I believe, the fridge came out. Interestingly, if you looked at every single sphere within this trajectory, no ice harvesters transitioned to becoming cold storage experts. No cold storage experts transitioned to being fridge experts or building out fridges. I believe we're in a similar stage now. I don't think financial advice in a whole will change, but I think financial advisors will change.
Mm-hmm.
And it is up to us to recognize, are we the ice harvesters right now? And how can we go about changing so that we develop with the times?
Interesting. So you had your own financial planning business.
Yep.
If you could take yourself back to that right now, knowing what you know about AI and so on and so forth, what would you have thrown your weight and time at in terms of looking at the business? What aspects of the business or financial planning would you be really focusing on right now, knowing what you know now?
When we started out, as you're asking in the case that I started a new financial advising business now. Gotcha. Cool. When I started my financial advising business, I made a ton of mistakes and I failed a whole bunch. So one of the biggest challenges that I found, or I don't know if it's so much a challenge, but the thing that I personally hated doing the most came down to annual review letters, suitability letters. Largely, when I started out my business, I was a one-man shop.
Uh-huh.
So I would end up giving advice, but what I'd find is I'd spend, let's say I met with 3 clients in one day and I gave them all advice. I'd spend the entirety of the day after just writing out this entire report, ensuring that it's compliant, and then actioning it from there. A couple of things went to my mind. From a selfish perspective, I thought I am doing the one thing. I'm not doing a revenue generating task, nor that's number one. And I thought from a business perspective, that just wasn't very helpful. It's not letting me progress the way I want to. But the second element was, how value generating was this? There's a Steve knows this well, but there's this individual that used to work in the FCA, now became a consultant, did this test where I believe it's called the pink elephant test. And what would happen is a suitability letter would go on for about 30 pages long. And in one of those pages, what he did was he added a pink elephant, a bright, big pink elephant right in the middle. And out of 100 suitability letters that were sent out, only 2 people came back saying, oh, actually, why is there a pink elephant in my suitability letter? To represent that actually, how many people really read the entirety of the report that's been sent out to you?
Yeah.
Something that I just thought, gosh, it really frustrated me, because every time I'd create a suitability letter, I'd create a financial or one-page financial plan, just so they actually understood what they're doing, so they didn't have to read an entire 30-page document thereafter. So if I was starting again, I'd think, let me go for the biggest bottleneck first. Let me ensure I can go ahead and automate that so I can do what I'm best at.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what was it that really got under your skin, that made you think, I've got to put time, effort, money, passion into developing an AI product?
Yeah, I think it was one, the things that I personally hated, like I just mentioned, but it was the other. It was the people around me that was asking to go about using what I was using. So as I was having these frustrations, I came across a friend of mine, Roshan, and he just so happened to go to MIT studying natural language processing. This was before LLM was even a thing, or
Yeah.
rather, before LLM was as viral as it is now. And I said, Roshan, I'll pay you for it. Can you just give me a week of your time? I would love to be a lot more efficient with what I'm doing now. Can you
Right.
just see what you can do? Roshan at the time just sold his previous business. He was nice enough to say, tell you what, I'll do it for free. Let's see what I can do for you. I said I'd pay him in beers. He was happy with that transaction.
Yeah.
And a week later, the first thing that he created was a me-to-make transcript. So being able to transcribe recordings, that was simple enough. The thing that really blew my mind was at the time I used to do about a 5-page annual review letter, and it was broken down into specific elements. What we could do is take not only a recording, but also the cash flow model that I would use and the fact find, get all of that information to do about 50% of that report. And I used that for about 3 to 4 months. Some of my other friends of mine who also had financial advising practices would come to me and go, what is that thing that you're using? Or how does that go about working? And what we found over time was a lot of them would come to me and say, well, look, if I pay you for it, can I use it?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe there's something here, and I'm not the only one facing these sort of challenges.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I listened to Daniel Priestley talking about his Score app product, which is basically an online quiz and online assessment tool. Similar story. He built it for himself, then starts getting inquiries from his entrepreneurial mates saying, "Can I have one of those, please?" And you've got yourself a business straight away. So before we get into the sort of the nitty gritty of your product, your service, what do you, Alan, see as the kind of big prize of AI for financial advisors?
Sure. There's like 2 points to this. There's one which is what we want to happen, and the second which is what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think a massive point within the financial advising industry is going to be adoption, and how the regulators go about helping around this adoption. That's a major role in what we as advisors do on a day-by-day basis. In terms of where we're looking to push at the moment, the entire industry, in terms of an AI perspective, is reactive.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is alluding to is you have to come on the platform and tell the platform what it is that you want to happen next. Example, you'd have to go on the platform and say, great, create me a meeting note from that recording, or you'd have to go to the platform and say, here's a series of documents, create me a suitability letter, here's an annual review letter. Or you yourself have to go ahead and book in a meeting with a client because you're about to meet them for your annual review meeting. our ambition is, and hopefully within this year, we will transition into making the company a proactive AI firm. And what does this mean in practice? As opposed to you having to come on the platform and say what it is that you want to do, because the likes of Evie and Emma, the AI models, is with you throughout the whole journey, meaning they're in the meetings with you, they should, in theory, understand what it is that you're also going to do.
Yeah.
Or you could always record yourself and communicate with Evie and Emma as to what you're going to do, and then you could understand, great, I understand the complete context. You don't need to tell me to do anything. I will action directly off the back of the conversation you've just had.
Yeah.
So imagine, if you will, you've talked about a fund that a client's going to be invested into. You've talked about what wrapper they're going to be invested into. And then you've also said, great, we're going to action this straight away. And as soon as that meeting is done, we'll have our models search the internet, for example, look towards FE analytics, get the fund fact sheet information, create the illustration in itself, be able to conduct a ROI calculation, and then generate a suitability letter ready for you and send it to you yourself, so that you don't have to do anything, go to any other platform.
Yeah, fabulous. Exciting times. So, you guys have twice, I think, come out tops in Ian McKenna's AI conferences, technology conferences. For those advisors who've not been to that, I would strongly recommend you do, because you get the people like our friends here doing live demonstrations, and you've only got a few minutes to do it as well, and you guys have come up top twice. So tell us about what the product does, the solutions you're trying to address, and feel free to give us the dog and pony show as well.
Sure. So we've broken down wealth management, as of now anyway, into three specific elements. One, which is advice, support staff, and compliance. And EATT and the showcase that Ian McKenna does, so we've been able to do that for the past 2 years. In the first year, we only launched Emma, and a year later, we now launched Evie, Emma, and Colin. So Evie is the AI model that we have for financial advisors. Emma is for support staff, and Colin is for compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have personified these, like Steve mentioned, because Emma was initially the employee I had in the past. But the second reason why is because we've built our AI models in a way where we can make them extremely personalized specifically to your firm. And what does that mean? It means different firms look for different things off the back of a meeting. And there's a lot that you can obtain off the back of a meeting. We spoke just before we started, Phil, from a transcript. Yes, you can get very basic bits of information, but you can get the nuances if you search for them. For example, how did a client react, depending on the sort of things you said, that made them think, wow, I'm getting a lot of value for the advice that you're giving. Perhaps that should be snippeted so that you can repeat those phrases that you said in the past again in the future.
Yeah.
Or similarly, vulnerability, which is a massive one now for consumer duty. So those are the three models that we've now created. And about 2 years from inception, we now work with a couple hundreds of firms, over 300 firms now, including the likes of Foster De Novo, Finley, all the way down to one-man bands.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're hoping what we're doing is creating an ecosystem so that it's not a one-way shop. When you end up making advisors a lot more productive, well, that just means that you're now passing on the workload, and there's going to be a lot more work for another team, typically support staff and compliance.
Right.
So without further ado, I can share my screen and showcase what this looks like in practice.
Great.
Okay. Steve, was there anything else to add from that, do you think?
No, it sounds great. And I think the only bit, so Phil, you asked me a slightly different question to Alan, right? So you asked me sort of where is it going, and then you specifically said the words, what's the prize? And I think for me, the evolution of the conversation, a lot of surveys, a lot of events I go to just ask the question, do you use AI in your business today? And going back to Alan's analogy, it's a bit like saying, do you use electricity? And you go, well, yes, I do. Everyone does, right? So my point being is, it's the evolution of the conversation. Say, well, what do you use it for? What does it do for you? And how does that benefit you? What is the prize? So coming back to your excellent question there, Phil. Yes, it keeps my food cold. It means I can have a nice dinner and I don't get food poisoning is the answer, right? So so coming back to AI, we'll talk about the breadth of adoption of AI across the whole business, not just, and transcriptions and meeting notes are good starting points, are low hanging fruit. But the prize is actually being able to scale your business. Advice is very personalized. So it's being able to scale your business from 1 to 100 ratio to that being much, much larger. We have firms that have 2.5x that ratio within 6 months of using the system with no change to their headcount or OPEX. Also, there's prizes like spending more time with your clients. If you're more compliant and checking 100% of your reports on sampling 10%, the prize is sleeping easier at night, knowing that if you're audited, that you have got 100% compliance check, not 10%. And it might just be a tax year end that's a bit more stress-free. So actually, I think the evolution of the conversation that I would love to see in the industry is to move away from, do you use AI? Okay, yes, you need to understand what tasks it does and where the hotspots are. And we're going to create a white paper that actually maps out pre and post adoption of AI across the full end-to-end journey. But I think the why, and what does that do for your business? It allows you to scale, allows you to sleep easier at night. It means happier clients, and more time with your clients. Because that's really, going back to Alan's point, that's the value, is time spent with the client. So I just thought I'd jump in on the because I think it's a slightly different question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Over to you, Alan.
Great. What I'll do, conscious of time here, is show 3 really simple facets. EV, I'll just show really quickly. Meeting note, I feel like everyone's can go about understanding what that really looks like. We won't spend much time on that. The second is I'll show a suitability letter generated by Emma. And to be clear, Emma can do suitability letters, annual review letters, to also LOA pack summaries. And the third part, what I'll do is I'll just show Colin as well, which can create a compliant report off the back of the report that was generated, or any sort of file checks or files that were uploaded. So what I'll do here is, so we've got a meeting note here. Now you can end up, if you have a face-to-face, you can use our app, or in this instance, you can upload a recording, or comparatively, if you use Zoom, Teams, or Google Meets, we are integrated with all of those platforms. So you'd have a bot that would join that meeting, which would be an EV bot. And you can end up changing that name if you'd like, specific to your own business. In this instance, what it's conducting is it will take that meeting recording, transcribe the recording, and go ahead and put this into a structured meeting note. Now, the great part about this is, and the reason for why we personified, right, is because all of this, for example, here we've got overview, circumstances, objectives and goals, employment notes, risk assessment, vulnerability considerations. You might go, okay, this is super comprehensive, but could this be better? And that's pretty much the question that we always end up asking. What we can do is show you a whole series of different meeting notes that you can choose from, or better yet, if you have an understanding of what you want to see, you can send that meeting note over to us, and we can train Evie to get that sort of output every single time.
Right.
So you have that optionality, which is what a lot of firms find really helpful. So for example, for me, when I was an advisor, some of the things that really helped me out, or what Evie would have helped me out, is what are the things that I should have discussed, but I didn't in this meeting. So outstanding topics. For example, this person just got divorced, so financial planning post-divorce. The settlement details were not discussed. Client will has not been updated now post the divorce. Pension planning was not discussed. There's like a whole series of bits of information.
Yeah.
It just puts you in the know. Before we move on with Evie, on the right-hand side, you'll see series of make changes or sample prompts or message Evie. That is essentially allowing for you to communicate with Evie so you can change the output. And this also feeds as a feedback loop to train Evie. So the more you communicate with Evie, the more Evie gets better. Great report. What I'll do now is the big one. I'll create a suitability letter.
This is the one that so many people ask about.
Okay, fantastic. what I'll do, and to make it really clear, think of this as if you yourself are a support staff here. You're about to write a suitability letter, and there's a series of documents that you have to cross-reference and read, right? So normally this may be fact find, it could be analytics, illustration, the meeting notes from the meeting you've just had, the ROI calculation, and if it's a transfer of some form, you may also have seeding scheme information.
Yep.
The big benefit of what Emma can provide is, as opposed to you having to read multiple different documents, hundreds of different pages, you can simply upload all of that information here. And it can be a docx file, it can be a PDF, or even recordings. That's completely up to you. And what this will do on the other side is create what we like to call Emma snapshot. And this is a section where Emma is essentially going, great, I've read through everything, I've cross-referenced every single document. Could you just let me know if I'm correct in my understanding of specific sections?
Mm-hmm.
Here, for example, we've got objectives and gone, here's all the objectives I found. Are they all correct? It's also providing you with citations of where this information was received. If it looks good, you just go ahead and click looks good. Similarly with risk as well. And it's doing a tremendous amount of analysis here, trying to cross-reference every single document to come up with an output that you can just go, yes, that's all good, that's all correct, that all looks good, and this can also be amended. This is probably my favorite section. It's probably also where support staff save the most amount of time. For the recommendation, this is a consolidation of all the existing pension plans into a SIP within Quota. In this instance, what you can do is upload all the information as long as you tell it what the recommendation is. What Emma can do is actually figure out for itself what are the reasons for why this recommendation makes sense and what are the potential disadvantages to the recommendation. So you can work that out for itself and you can make that decision of whether you agree with that or whether you should go back changing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like with everything else we've seen so far, Emma is very much like an actual employee. We even have a probation period for Emma, in which case, if you don't see the value, you can get all the money back. So it's almost like treating it like an actual addition to the company.
Yeah.
I'll just press looks good in these instances here. And I'll get to the end point. These are all the citations on the left-hand side. And I click next. What Emma's now going to do is write up the entire suitability letter. And this is either in the templates that we already have from our side, or comparatively, it can be made bespoke specifically to your firm. What you should find, though, is that as opposed to the Emma snapshot should not take more than 10 minutes, typically 10, 15 minutes. What you should have now is a completed, consolidated suitability report on the other side that is up to about 18 pages long. That should be in your template, your format, your tone of voice, completely completed, as well as tables populated as well.
Yeah.
Now, like with many things with the AI, this should also be reviewed just to make sure it's accurate and it's how you want this to be. But what we've typically found is firms that we work with will see about a 50% time savings in writing something like a suitability letter or an annual review letter within the first 30 to 45 days of having Emma.
Right.
So this is suitability letter. What I'll just quickly do is share another screen where I've got ready the compliance. So this is, again, a report that I generated myself on the back end. And we've got this banner on the right-hand side. It's already checked now, but if you click that, what you see is Colin completely in action now. You'll have a series of, and Colin is a model that's trained on the FCA handbook and consumer duty guidelines. So what you'll have here is Colin breaking it down, and we've worked with several compliance consulting firms now, and we've broken it down into specific sections that's going to be looking into, and it's going to be quite transparent, saying it was a partial pass, it was a fail, it was a fail. And what you can always do is view the completed report and see exactly where it's passed, exactly where it's failed as well, and there's citations throughout all of it, so then you know exactly where that information is coming from. For example, has a client's employment status been fully documented, including details of benefits provided by the employer? No specific details about client's employment status, job title, employment benefits documented, include client's employment details. So it's also providing you with remedial action. Now, it may be the case that you as a firm do that specific form of compliance in a different way. Maybe you wouldn't necessarily upload all of that information into MO, or you wouldn't have this in a suitability letter. You might have this in another outside document. Then that's fine. You can go ahead and amend this Colin compliance officer specifically for your practice. So it's looking at those things that are directly important to you. And similarly, last thing from me, when you get out there, there's also a compliance checker on the bottom left-hand side here. If you click that, you can do both report checking, so you can upload a document, or you can do file checking. So you can upload a whole series of different documents here. I've got this document, and you can go ahead and find this out information here. But yeah, so that is those three models in action. And I hope that was pretty clear. Let me know if it was.
We could probably sit there looking at that all day, to be quite honest. So how easy is it for an advisor to get started? What's the kind of onboarding like, and training and so on and so forth?
So we have a onboarding team within AdvisoryAI. I think going back to the earlier point that you mentioned, Phil, of a lot of people going ahead and utilizing AI only for them to think it didn't meet our expectation. We challenge that and go, actually, because you require, it's a skill set that has to be learned. It's got to be something that's trained. And so we believe that strongly. So when you come on to AdvisoryAI, you can pick the pathway of having a customer success manager for yourself, in which case the customer success manager will showcase best practice, the workarounds, and how you can go about ensuring you're getting the outcome that you're looking for off the back of utilizing these models. So if you want to use our templates from the shelf, you can get started on the day, almost immediately. Alternatively, if you wanted to bespoke it specifically to you and you sent us a series of templates to go about automating, we can do that within a week.
Right. And from your helicopter position, seeing how advisory firms are using your tool there, are you seeing any examples? Let's look at it from both ends. Are you seeing any advisors who are they're not quite getting it, they're missing a trick in terms of how they're using it? And at the other end of the scale, are you seeing any firms that this is has been completely transformative for their business, and in what ways?
Yeah, shall I jump in there, Alan? So if I start with the latter, which is fully transformative. So if I look at someone like Lift Financial, Johnny Stubbs and Colette Noble speak at a lot of events about AI and their experience, and we can sit here all day long saying that we think the product's fantastic, but actually hearing it from someone who's walked a mile in those shoes is very different. And there will be adoption, in terms of that change management. I think what we have found with our most successful rollouts is that they will perhaps pick a smaller pilot group of people and say, are you using AI in your day-to-day life? Is it something you're leaning into already? Do you want to be part of the pilot? So that means that those people, you don't have to break down any barriers. They sort of adopt it quite quickly. They get the benefit, and then there's a bit of FOMO, right? And people are looking over their shoulder and say, how did you produce that suitability letter in 25 minutes where it takes me 7 hours? That's a genuine stat, by the way. So I think that where people have rolled it out successfully, that is where they've seen people do 2 to 3 times the capacity of work. If we look at Foster de Novo, take a complex pension transfer case, the average used to be 7 hours for them to produce that output. And also from a grading perspective, they have a grade from A to E. Actually, the average grade has increased, and the time to produce that has become 5 to 10 minutes to actually create the output through the system, and about 25 minutes to check. So they're now at a 92% efficiency saving. So that's really transformative from a cost, but also, again, where do you redeploy that time? If you look at someone like Lift Financial, yeah, they're one of the firms that used to have an advisor to client ratio cap of 100 per advisor, and they've moved that to 150, now 200.
Right.
And they're looking at, as the wider effect of other distribution models, which looks at the lower mass affluent segment, and the sort of natural successors of the that sort of intergenerational wealth transfer. There'll be distribution models that now provide a service and keep them in the incubator. It's either the next generation or what these acronyms like Henry's, high earner, not rich yet, is one. So I think that's a part. That's the transformational piece. I think the challenges come in terms of where do I start.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next.
I think also the reality is the average advice firm probably may not have a CTO, so it may not have someone that's actually responsible for looking at tech, let alone AI. So it's a bit like having an RFP where it says, what's the LLM you use? And we say it's Llama. It's a trained version of Llama. And they go, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. A Llama to me is something that can spit at someone else, right? So it becomes quite a difficult thing to do vendor selection. And I think the vendor selection piece is probably more about the people and the culture and the domain expertise, and do they feel like they're going to work with you over the long term? Because AI is moving so quickly. So I think the friction is probably around. It's a bit like, I was however many years old, not that many years ago, that I first understood what a pivot table was in Excel. And I spent years sort of trying to bugger about with Excel, cells and whatever else it may be. And someone showed me this thing, and I went, oh God, I imagine the amount of hours I've wasted doing that in my life. So I think there's a part, we have a responsibility around customer success training, making sure we do group webinars and those sorts of things, getting started. This is Evie, this is Emma, this is Colin. I think the other part in terms of what success looks like is, start small, but have a partner where you can expand across your whole business. And I think the other part is have a champion. Now, they don't need to be the most technical person, but just have someone that says, you're our AI champion. You're the person that's going to spend time looking at these and get beneath that, scratching the surface question of, do you use AI? So one thing I would encourage you, Phil, is when you go to these events and you see the next event that says, do you use AI in your firm? I would encourage you to stand up and
use electricity,
because it's the wrong question.
That's very. I would imagine that all said, and I really take that on board. I would imagine for a lot of advisors, this is quite a big deal to start running your business on the back of something else and you've been told, and you hear it all the time, you can't rely on AI and it makes mistakes and all the rest of it. So we know we need to be doing something, but we're a bit nervous about it. Yes, provider selection is obviously an important thing, but we're beginning to realize that it's quite one thing getting ChatGPT to help us write a blog, which we, fairly low risk activity. It's quite another saying, right, here's our data, off we go. So how can you reassure people that are starting to think about taking this big step?
So, I don't know, I was going to say, if I can come to you on the sort of technical bit around LLM as a judge and all the other protective the system has, just to prefix that, the way I look at it is human plus AI is better than human or AI.
Okay.
So the answer to that question, in my view, is it's having a human in the loop. Like with that report production that Alan just showed you, you change from being the author to the editor.
Yeah.
So I'll pass over to Alan for all the ways that the system doesn't hallucinate and put protection in and all those sorts of things and the way that it's been trained. But that's the quote for me, which is human plus AI is better than human or AI. So augment yourself with AI. I think a lot of people see AI and think rise of the machines. I don't. I think Tony Stark, Iron Man. I can shake his hand and say hello, Tony, and he can empathise with me. But he gets in his suit and he flies off into the sunset. That's the way I see AI.
That's a very nice analogy. Yeah. So let's talk quickly about security, Alan. Yeah, how's that all work?
So I was going to echo everything that Steve said. I completely agree with all of that. In terms of security, to go about looking at that when deciding which firm to work with, we found the best way is benchmarks. So there are a series of other firms that provide rigorous testing to ensure that a firm is matching for security standards. For example, there's Cyber Essentials, there are ISO 27001, there are stress testing cybersecurity companies. So, pardon me. So, with any firms deciding to work with any tech provider, I would urge them to firstly ask for their DD pack. And there's a lot of information there that's going to be very focused on the tech side. So, to make it easier, to ensure it's following GDPR regulations, ensure what companies are backing them as a benchmark perspective. What certifications do they have? What pen testing have they also done? And do you trust those companies that have gone about doing that? And if it's a reputable source, then you should be okay to go about using it. And probably another easy method to find out whether they're a company to work with or not is what large firms does that provider work with already? Because more often than not, the large firm has already done a series of very rigorous testing to ensure that that company is GDPR compliant.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So
I would add as like a last point on the, you mentioned earlier on what are the pitfalls that firms have when working with AI providers. I was in a panel recently with Helen Lovett from Foster de Novo at PA360 conference, and she's at COO of FD. And one of the things she said was, because someone asked the exact same question, Phil, and she said, just give it a go, just try it. For you to use every software, AI software in the advising space right now, say there's, I'm not really sure, more and more is coming out every day, but say there's about 10. If they're good, and you should be able to go through workflows pretty quickly with each one of them, if they're good, you should be able to go through all 10 in a day. And the point there is, trial them all out. We've spoken with so many firms where they've just gone ahead with the first AI provider they've spoken with, and they've gone, I've seen so many other awesome things being built, but this is the AI provider that I first spoke with, so I'm going to stick with them. I completely disagree with that notion, and that goes the same with our clients as well, right?
Yeah.
You go continuously, test what's in the marketplace, and see. Let me just go with what I believe is best for our specific problem that we're having.
That's interesting because one of the things I'm seeing constantly in our Facebook group, and I'm also seeing it on LinkedIn, is advisors asking, what's the best tool for this? Are you saying that's actually okay to ask that? There's a bit of me that says we need to be thinking bigger, we need to be thinking more strategically, blah, blah, blah. But for now, it's okay to just go with what's the best tool for this.
I would also add that every advising firm that we've ever worked with or spoken with are all slightly different in the way that they work. I can understand why firms will ask that question, and I think it's an important question to ask. It's a valid question to ask. What I also urge as a secondary act to that is it's super easy to go ahead and test it out. I imagine almost all AI providers should provide a trial that you can test it out with.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Have a couple of cases that you've already got ready, example test cases or mock test cases. Get a trial with all 10. Use them all in a day. You can understand, or you should be able to understand pretty quickly, how is their output come across? What is the value that's going to give to me? And most importantly, how much time is this going to save me? And how much stress is this going to take away from my plate every day?
Is there kind of best practice that you suggest around that initial starting point to run a few clients through work with AI? But and what I'm getting is, do we carry on as normal and we run a little trial alongside, or is it all in? What's the best kind of practice to get started?
Sure. So I imagine different providers will work in different ways. One of the immediate things that firms can do is have KPIs set.
Right.
A frustrating way, for example, at AdvisoryAI, we provide a guarantee, or some firms call it a probation period, where if we don't save you 50% of your time in writing reports or documents in the first 30 days, we give you all the money back. That's a pretty bold statement from us. And what that forces us to do is have skin in the game. So we always ask firms, what's your KPI? So that we know what 50% time saving really is.
Yeah.
But I'd also say this is helpful when you utilize any other AI providers. So understanding what your current KPI is now, and what I mean by that is, if you were to write a ISA switch or an ISA top up, how long does that take you from the point of starting the report to the point of ending that report, right? And then the other process, such as meeting notes as well, or LOA pack summaries, or a fact find, or populating CRM systems. How much time does it take you? That's number one. Second is having test cases available already. A frustrating thing that can happen is you start a trial, and then you don't actually have a use case that you can use that with because you're not providing a recommendation to anyone, so you don't have a secret letter.
Yeah.
Have a series of cases that you have ready to go about testing. The provider should also be able to provide you with this. For example, we provide test cases so that you can utilize this in your own templates.
Great.
The third part is training. Do you require training? Does the firm that you're about to work with, they are provide training to go about understanding best practices? If that's available, you should absolutely go ahead and take that.
Right, fabulous. I'll tell you one thing. I love the idea of having an AI champion in the business. Something I've been thinking about for quite a while. It could be a non-exec director. It could be just someone on the team whose job is to just stay on top of what's going on in the world of AI as it impacts financial advice and planning, to report back in regularly, weekly, whatever. Subscribe to a few newsletters as well, so that you know what's going on in the wider AI world as well, so you can see the context within. But I think that's such an important role, and I think for firms that are thinking, okay, well, we're going to look at this in a year's time, you could actually start now by having an AI champion of somebody who's responsible for just keeping the plate spinning, keeping the understanding, the learning, because this is all changing so fast. So my final kind of question to you is going to be, let's fast forward, say, 3 years. How's the profession going to be looking thanks to AI in 3 years' time?
If we look at the key metric of what we strongly believe in, we strongly believe that the main area of value that we provide as advisors is sitting with a client, and that's it, nothing else. If we're really breaking it down to first principles, in 3 years, that is all anyone will ever do.
Right.
Meaning, and so there's a couple of assumptions that we're making with that, right?
Yeah.
Meaning that the prep for the meeting is already done. The cash flow modeling for the meeting is already done. The analysis after the meeting is already done. The process of writing out reports is already done. There's a series of things that have to be presumed for that one element to take place.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would take 3 years. I think we'll get there a lot sooner than that.
I was going to say 5 years, and I thought, nah, it's going to be completely different by then. That's when we talk about the role of an advisor changing. I think there's interesting that some skill sets will be important. Well, they are now, like listening skills and so on and so forth, and empathy and what have you. That's kind of going back to how when I started in the 70s and 80s, it was all about sales skills and listening skills and presentation skills. I think we actually might be coming back to that kind of time.
Well, I think it gets to that, and I think it gets really exciting here, Phil, because at the moment, one advisor may have 125 clients. So a client or one client is sharing a percentage of this one advisor amongst all the other clients that this advisor has.
Yeah.
I think within 3 years' time, personalization will be able to be scaled at such a point. What you should be asking yourself is, if you just had one client, what sort of value would you be able to provide to them? How above and beyond could you go? And if you go to the nuts and bolts, I think, well, one exciting thing would be, imagine if one of the biggest things that a financial advisor does is behavioral coaching, trying to change someone's habits.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you could immediately obtain the habit of how they spend money on a month-by-month basis? If something's changed, if they bought something that seems slightly strange, if it's connected to their Facebook and something happened in their direct life, say someone passed away, something in LinkedIn happened where they ended up changing a job, in which case you get notified immediately and you get an action point of what you should do. You just changed a job. What about your legacy pension now, consolidating that again? I think the question should be, if if there was no nothing stopping it, as a human, there's things stopping us. We have limitations of what we can do. If there was nothing stopping us, and you just had one client, how far would you go, or what would you really do to give them the best advice possible? And I think that's really the conversation we should be having, and that would probably be an interesting one in 3 years' time.
Yeah,
and just to add on to that, Phil, I know we're running out of time, but the whole concept of the annual review, I think, will change. So statistically, one day out of 365, that being the day where I'm engaged as a client and I need to talk to my advisor, is relatively low. It's really, really minuscule, right? So it's a bit like saying I get to go and see my GP once a year, but am I ill that day? Or, do I need to see the GP? So I think that's the way to see that professional services model evolving to be where the client is, where they need you to add the most value on their journey together. And that's where that will be a fantastic outcome for societally, actually, as well as the industry.
A very profound way to start to finish there. Thank you. That's brilliant. Guys, how do people get in touch with you? Where do they find you? What should they ask you?
They can get in touch via our website, www.advisoryai.com, or reach out to us directly, Alan, ALAN, at advisoryai.com, or Steve at advisoryai.com.
Fabulous.
Yeah, or ping us a note on LinkedIn, and we can follow up on that as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Guys, this has been really interesting. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that. Thank you also to everybody who's joined us today. Conscious of everybody's time as well. So you've been very generous with that as well. We'll make sure everybody gets a copy of the recording as well. And probably a transcript, which AI will create for us as well. So that's it from us. Thank you very much, everybody. Nice to see you. Thanks again, Alan and Steve. Really appreciate your time. And we'll see everybody in time for the next one next week. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Well, thanks all. Bye.